Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of A New Life in Italy. I'm your host, Samantha Wilson, and today we're diving into one of the most exciting, and well, let's be real, sometimes nerve-wracking parts about buying a home in Italy, and that is planning your property viewing trip. Now, if you're serious about buying in Italy, you are going to go through several steps, starting with the endless online searches, and then you'll narrow down a short list of properties that actually match what you want. And then finally, you will book that all-important viewing trip to see them all in person. But here's the thing. This isn't just a vacation. You aren't just coming here to stroll through cute little villages and sip espresso between all of these house tours. You're actually on a mission. And the goal is to find the best place for the best price and fully understand what you're buying. And if you don't plan this trip right, if you don't know what questions to ask, who to talk to, or how to navigate the process, you could end up wasting a whole lot of time, money, and of course, energy. And the worst case scenario, you could just leave Italy frustrated with no real progress toward buying your dream home. And trust me, I have seen this happen a lot, where people just book their flights and show up here ready to start their search. In fact, we get calls and emails all the time about this saying, hey, I'm here now. Can you show me some properties? But without doing any of the pre-work, without doing any of the vetting, no research, no idea what you're walking into, the agents just won't take you seriously. Also, half of the homes that you saw online either won't be available or maybe worse, aren't even really for sale. And without a solid understanding of the market, you are walking straight into negotiations at a huge disadvantage. And of course, if you do this before you know it, you will be one of those people on the plane going back home feeling completely deflated. But don't worry, my friends, because that is not going to be you. Because in today's episode, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to plan a successful buying trip in Italy. Today, you're going to learn how to pre-screen properties before your trip to avoid really bad dead ends. You're going to learn the biggest mistakes that buyers make when they arrive in Italy, why moving fast is super important, but moving smart is more critical. And then, of course, the absolute must-dos before you make an offer. Plus, I'm going to share some real insider tips, of course, expert advice, and a few stories about what not to do when you're hunting for your dream home. So if you want to walk away from your buying trip feeling super confident and ready to invest, this episode is for you. I'm Samantha Wilson, Chief Dreammaker at SmartMoveItaly.com, and this is A New Life in Italy, a show where each week I take you behind the scenes of what it's really like to move to Italy, introduce you to some fascinating people, answer your questions, and show you how starting a new life in Bel Paese is possible for you. Okay. Before we jump into the bits and the bobs of buying property in Italy, let's take a minute to talk about the expectations versus reality, something I talk a lot about. If you've watched any of these dreamy romantic movies about moving to Italy, you probably have already this picture in your mind about how this whole process is supposed to go. In fact, I think there was that latest Netflix film, I think it's La Dolce Villa or something like that, where someone buys this €1 Tuscan villa, of course, and magically transforms it into their dream home. Yeah, let's just say Hollywood took a very big amount of creative liberties with that one for sure. But, you know, as incredible as it sounds, it's just obviously not real. You can't just swoop in, pick up a dirt cheap house in Italy, throw some paint on the walls, and boom, suddenly you're sipping your Chianti in this beautiful villa in Italy. It's just not how it works. The reality is that Italy's property market is nothing like North America or the UK or even Australia or probably anywhere else. And if you show up expecting it to be from what you know in your home country, you are going to be in for a very rude awakening. And here's why. Number one, there is no MLS system in Italy. So there's no one single database where every property for sale is listed. And if you want to see a variety of homes, you need to either do the legwork and talk to many different agents, or you have to have a buyer's agent represent you. Because, number two, real estate agents rarely collaborate. Unlike in, let's say, the US or Canada, where a buyer's agent can show you anything that's on the market, Italian agents typically only show the properties that they personally represent. And this means that if you only work with one agent, you will only be seeing a tiny fraction of what's available. So you need to do a lot of legwork, or of course, have a buyer's agent that works with you to contact all of these other agents to get access to all of the properties available. Now, the process varies wildly by region. So the prices, the rules, the required paperwork, even the way that properties are sold can be completely different from one part of Italy to another. And most agents work for the seller. And in Italy, the real estate agent's primary duty really is to connect the buyer with the seller. And if their agent is representing the seller and not you, well, what is their goal? Their goal is to get the best price for their client, and of course them, because they're making commission, which means that you need to be extra cautious and have someone looking out for your interests. So if your plan is to just figure it all out when you get here, let me just stop you right now, because that is a fast track to frustration. The key to a smooth and very successful buying trip is planning before you arrive. So there's a lot of work to do in advance. And that's what I want to talk about with you today. Before you even think about booking your flights to Italy, we need to talk about this pre-trip planning. So many people make the mistake of scheduling property viewings without really doing this groundwork first. They just arrive here, excited to see a bunch of houses, and they only realize that half of them, like I said, aren't really what they expected. Maybe the house looks really perfect in pictures, and actually it's in the middle of nowhere. Or the one with that really beautiful, charming rustic terrace turns out to have a ton of structural issues that could cost you a fortune to fix, if you can even fix them. So before you step foot in Italy, there is a whole process of narrowing down your search by pre-screening and vetting properties and making sure that when you do visit, you're only seeing places that are truly worth your time. So here's what you need to do. Start by being brutally honest with yourself, that is. Italy has thousands of gorgeous properties for sale, but that doesn't mean that all of them are right for you. It doesn't mean they all fit in your criteria. You have to separate that dream from reality. And before you do anything, you have to ask yourself some tough questions. So here's a few to think about. Number one, what do you really need in a home in Italy? Do you need all the same things that you need in your home, your primary home, in your home country? Where do you want to live? Do you want to be in a town, in the countryside, near the coast? This is a big question that you usually need to come clear on before you start your search. Do you need a place that is maybe move-in ready? Or are you open to renovation? And if you are you really up for the challenge of a reno in Italy? Because it can be quite stressful to do it from a distance. And then what is your actual budget, including your taxes and your fees? One good estimate is to expect about 10% of your purchase price will cost you in closing fees. Do you plan to live here full time, or is it just a vacation home? What is your future plans for this house? Will you retire in it? If so, is it in, let's say, a 7% flat tax zone, which might be your future goal? Houses here don't flip easily, so you need to think about buying a property as a long game. You're going to have this property for quite some time, so make sure it fits your needs now and into the future. I can't tell you how many people get swept away by a dreamy listing only to realize later that it doesn't actually fit their needs and their lifestyle later on. So before you start booking viewings, be clear on what matters to you now and what matters to you later. Then dig into the details before you visit. It's always easiest to eliminate properties first. So work through your love-to-haves and start eliminating the ones that don't fit at least 75% of your criteria. And keep this up until you have a short list of maybe 10 to 15 properties, and then start digging. Don't bother digging into everything that you look at first, because this can take a long time to get all of the information that you need, and there's really no point in wasting your time and an agent's time trying to dig into properties that really aren't in your shortlist. So once you have this shortlist, start asking the questions to the agent. And the goal is to determine if the property is really as good as it seems. And again, make your super shortlist to viewing in Italy. Now, the reason you want to do this is because a huge percentage of listings are outdated or misleading or have hidden legal issues online. So before you get invested, you need to learn more. Now, here's what you should be asking about every property before you commit to a viewing. Number one, confirm the property is actually for sale. Now, and that sounds obvious, right? But in Italy, listings can stay online for years, even after they've been sold. So always double check with the agent that it's actually still for sale. And number 2, ask for a floor plan and property details such as how many owners are on the property, what's the heating source, are there any issues with the documentation? And if the agent can't provide these details to you, then that's a bit of a red flag. Number 3, check Google Maps and a street view. It is amazing how different a place can look in professional photos versus reality. Ask yourself, is it really as private as the listing claims? How far from stores or hospitals or public transportation? Now, sometimes agents don't want to give you the address, so you might have to be a little bit adventurous with the Google Maps and try to figure out the location just based on some information in the description. Number 4, get a feel for the neighborhood. What's the local community like? Is it lively year-round, or does it shut down outside of tourist season? This can impact your lifestyle here, whether it's full-time or part-time, or even a property that you're using for an investment. And then finally, identify potential legal or structural issues. If a house has been abandoned for years, there could be, actually probably are, disputes over maybe ownership. If there's been a renovation where things haven't been followed through, you're going to have issues with permits. All of these kinds of things need to be identified in some detail, not perfect detail, but in some detail ahead of viewing a property. And I can't stress this enough. The more work you do up front, the smoother your trip will be. Now, once you've decided on your top properties, because you've done all of this work, you've pre-screened the properties, now it's time to lock in the appointments and come to Italy. You'll have a solid plan. And this is really the exciting part. You're finally here and you're able to walk through the homes that could actually become yours. But before you dive into that, I want to talk about how to maximize your time on the ground and make really smart and confident decisions when you're here. Because let me tell you, there is a right way to do a buying trip, and then there's the, I just wasted a bunch of money on flights and hotels and have no property to show for it way. Let's make sure you're in the first category. First of all, remember that less is more, so keep your schedule manageable. Now, I get it, you're coming to Italy, it's a long way, and you want to see everything all in one shot. You might be thinking, I'm just going to power through it and see maybe 10 houses a day. No problem at all. Wrong. I promise you, if you try to squeeze in multiple viewings in a day, your brain is going to shut down. And after a while, the houses will start to blend together and you won't be able to tell one from the other. Also, distances between properties can also be quite deceiving, and you will need time between properties. Italians love to talk, so there'll be very little in and out of viewings. Doing them really quick and fast like you might do in your home country. Each viewing will take a lot longer than you anticipate. Piano, piano, slowly, slowly. Relationships matter here and they take time. So instead of cramming in as many as possible, focus on quality over quantity. 2 to 3 solid viewings per day. That's it. No more. And why? Because this isn't just about seeing houses. It's about evaluating them. And you need time to walk through every room really slowly and carefully. You need time to ask the agent detailed questions, not just about the house, but about the neighborhood and the sellers and any red flags that they might have forgotten to mention earlier. You want to step outside and really get a feel for the area. Is it quiet? Is it well kept? Does it have easy access to things that you need? And you want to take a moment after every visit to process what you just saw and take notes, because I promise you, your memory will betray you. You think that you'll remember everything, but trust me, you won't. And that's why I tell everyone to take notes, take photos, take videos, and always pin the location on your Google Maps so you can drive by it later on your own if you want to. Because 3 days in, when you're looking back at 10 different properties, you're going to forget which one had the kitchen you loved, and which one had the outdated electrical system that's going to cost you a small fortune to fix. You'll need to remember these things. And here's a few tips on how to keep track. When you're taking notes, write down your first impression. So what was your gut feeling in this property? Did it feel immediately like home? Or did something feel off? What senses did it give you? Were there any major concerns? Was there a really weird smell? Was there evidence of past leaks? Did the house look like it was hiding something? And how about the surrounding environment? Are there roads in good condition? Is there a good road up to the property? Is it quiet or is it a lively area? Are the neighbors friendly? Are there any neighbors at all? And always try to do a video walkthrough. And trust me, this really does help. If you walk through the house with your camera on your phone and talk through what you see, later when you're back in your hotel, you will be able to use this. And trust me, it's going to be a lifesaver to separate one property from the other. But just be sure to ask permission before you start snapping pictures, because some owners are a little bit nervous about that. So when you're taking these pictures, the last thing is don't just take Instagram-worthy photos. Get the unfiltered reality. Zoom in on those cracks on the walls. Take pictures of the windows and the doors. Do they look secure? How many, is it a single pane or double pane window? Snap pictures of the electrical panels or pipes or water heaters, anything that kind of stands out to you. Even if there's mold, take some pictures of it. Don't assume it's just normal. Take a picture so that you can follow up and remember to follow up in the future. Later, when you're reviewing everything, these details will help you make a very clear-headed decision. Now, let's imagine that you found the one, the house that makes your heart just race, and the one where you can already see yourself waking up in the morning or even sitting on the terrace and maybe even placing your furniture in every room. Once you find the property you love, you will need to be ready to move fast, but not too fast. Finding a home you truly love is really a big deal, regardless of what country you're in. But in Italy, where the process can feel like navigating this crazy labyrinth sometimes, you need to start mentally digesting your property and your purchase. And you need to pause for a reality check. Because while you do need to move quickly when you find the right home, you cannot let excitement make you impulsive. Things don't move that fast in Italy, so stop, breathe, and think about what you're doing and think about the property. Now, this is where so many buyers get caught up. They rush in because from other countries, we always have this sense of urgency in everything that we do. If we don't act now, someone else is going to swoop in and take it from me. And sometimes, yes, that is a possibility if the property is very well priced in a very good area. But in most cases, you can just slow down just slightly so that you can reevaluate everything before you take the next step. Because if you rush in and you just are too eager to lock down that house, you can skip over some really critical steps that could cost you thousands, if not your entire investment. So let's talk about how to move efficiently without making some mistakes. Now, first of all, let me say this out loud and very clearly. Do not sign a single document, nothing, unless you have your own agent, somebody representing only you, like a buyer's agent, or you are represented by a property lawyer. Now, sometimes you don't need both of those things. Sometimes just a buyer's agent is fine. But do not sign anything immediately as you walk out of the house until you have had time to digest what you've seen and or you have somebody representing you. Now, this is not the seller's real estate agent. This is not your friendly neighbor who knows a guy. This isn't even your seller's lawyer. This is somebody working for you. You need your own independent expert, especially as a foreigner, who works for you and only you. Now, not all properties need the help of a real estate lawyer, but very high-priced ones or complex structures like, farms or multi-unit properties often do need a lawyer. But you should always have your own independent representation. And here's why. Contracts in Italy are very different from what you're used to, and they're all in Italian. The preliminary contract is the thing you sign when you make an offer. It's legally binding, meaning that if you change your mind later, you could lose your deposit. Now, of course, you can and you should put conditions in an offer that give you time to answer some of the questions that you may have, like an inspection or a document evaluation, and this will give you an out from that preliminary contract. But you do need to be careful that you do not sign anything that will bind you until you have all the answers, until you're confident that you're ready to buy. The other reason is you need somebody who understands local laws. Italy's property laws are very complex and they vary by region. So what's normal in Tuscany might be completely different in Sicily. You need someone who understands this. And also, often your own representative will uncover some hidden issues. A good agent or a lawyer will check that the house has any outstanding debts. There's a mortgage or liens or inheritance claims, or disputes over property boundaries, for example. The last thing you want is to buy a house that comes with legal baggage. Now, it's also a good idea to work with someone that has worked with foreign buyers. that speaks your language, that understands the challenges that non-Italians face in the process, especially if you are from countries that don't have reciprocity with Italy. And right now, that's Australia. Well, you can get through it with Australia, but right now, in 2025, Canada does not have a reciprocity with Italy, meaning as a Canadian, you cannot buy a second home here in Italy. So all of these things, you need to have somebody that you could trust that can help guide you through the process, not waste your time or your money, of course. Now, you should also always consider hiring a geometra, which is a surveyor, to inspect the property. This is one of the most overlooked steps, by the way, by foreign buyers, and I cannot stress enough how important it is. In Italy, home inspections aren't a real standard practice like they are back in your home country. That means if you don't hire a geometra, which is a surveyor, to inspect the home, you might not find out about major structural issues until after you've signed the contract. And trust me, you do not want to be the person who finds out that that beautiful villa had a serious foundation problem after the deal is done. The geometra, or the surveyor, will specialize in some things, like he or she will check the integrity, the structural integrity of the home. These are cracks and leaks or weak foundations. They will verify the building permits to ensure that all the renovations were done legally. And they'll confirm that the property matches the cadastral records. And in Italy, sometimes what's legally on paper does not match what's in reality. And they can also give you an estimate on future repair costs, which is crucial if you're buying an older home that might need some TLC or you want to enter into a renovation. It's nice to know what you can and cannot do in advance of purchasing. Which leads me to my last part, and that is verifying the legal status of the home. Now, this part is pretty critical. Italy's real estate system isn't as centralized as in other countries, which means that not all properties are created equal. So here's what you need to check. Number one, are there any unresolved ownership disputes? It's not uncommon for multiple family members to have a claim on an inherited property, even if only one person is selling it. And if this isn't cleared up before you buy, it could cause a lot of legal problems and arguments later on. And number two, were any renovations done without permits? Now, this is a huge issue in Italy, especially in older homes. A seller could have added an extra bedroom or built a terrace or modified the layout without proper authorization. And if those modifications weren't legally approved, well, guess what? It's now your problem. You may need to pay a fine, undo renovations, or even risk having part of your home declared uninhabitable. And you'll never be able to resell it until you fix it. So it's a big problem that you need to resolve before you buy. And number three, are there any unpaid taxes tied to the property? Yes, in Italy, property tax debts stay with the house, not the seller. So if there are unpaid taxes on the home, you inherit the debt. Now, a notaio will eventually transfer the deed, and he or she will confirm that these issues for you, but it's important to learn them much earlier on to ensure that you're not taking on some unexpected financial burdens to the house. So finally, let's talk briefly about negotiating in Italy. Now, unlike some countries, negotiations in Italy are expected, but they work just a little bit differently. Now, here's what you need to know. Lowballing is an absolute no-go. Now, I know in Italy, it's got this reputation, but offering way below the asking price can offend the seller, not can, but will offend the seller and completely ruin the deal. So instead of going in with a ridiculously low offer, work with your agent to make a reasonable offer or a counter offer. And remember that this is a relationship that you have with the seller. It's not merely transactional. In fact, I remember a client of our property team that was adamant that he would offer no more than 50% of the asking price because he heard that that's the way it was done in Italy, and he felt if he didn't do that, he was getting completely ripped off as a foreigner. That's not true, and that's not normal, and no, we did not help him buy a house because that's not how you do that here in Italy. Now, many properties can be negotiated, of course, but you need to be strategic and always mindful of the cultural differences here. Very few things in Italy are purely transactional in nature, and that includes buying and selling property. There is this lifetime of memories in these houses. These are old family properties mostly, and sometimes multiple generations and sometimes even centuries of history. And it will do you well to tap into the importance of that history when you're negotiating with the Italians. This will help you get the best price for the property. Now, also know when to walk away. Sometimes sellers just won't budge, or there's something wrong with the property. If the price isn't right or the house has too many issues, just be ready to move on. Just let it go. The right house is out there, I promise, but let this one go. And also, negotiation isn't just about price. You can negotiate what's included in the sale as well, like the furniture, the appliances, the fixtures, even the kitchen. Some sellers will leave everything, while others will completely strip the place bare. I mean, completely bare. So look beyond the house, because there may be more value in the convenience of keeping, say, the kitchen to start, and then removing everything later. But be sure to get it all in writing so it's crystal clear at the time of closing. And finally, timing matters. If the property has been sitting on the market, obviously, for a long time, the seller is probably more willing to negotiate. But if it's a newly listed property, they are not usually likely to entertain much lower offers than what they're asking, because like everybody, they're feeling it's brand new, everybody's going to love it. You have to wait them out sometimes to get the price a little bit lower. Look, I know how exciting it is when you find a home, but in Italy, buying real estate isn't just about falling in love with the property. It's about making sure that it's the right investment for you. So with all of this, I want you to remember a few things. Number one, be sure to have your own representation, whether that's a buyer's agent or a lawyer or somebody, maybe it's an Italian friend or relative. I say this on all kinds of subjects. You are a foreigner here in Italy, and you will need somebody who understands you and who represents you and who is committed to you and your efforts and what you're trying to do. And that includes when you're buying property here in Italy. So make sure that you have also a geometra lined up so that you're ready to move quickly, but not recklessly into a property. Now, number two, always verify the legal status of the home. If there's ownership disputes or missing permits or tax debts that cannot or will not be fixed, you need to be able to walk away. And then finally, negotiate wisely. It's an art form in Italy. And a good deal isn't just about price. It's about making sure you're getting a secure, legal, and well-vetted property, and it's a back and forth between the seller and you, the new buyer. And if you follow all of these steps, your buying trip will be really successful. You'll be able to come here, you'll find the property that you love, and walk away feeling very confident in your decision. Now, of course, if you want expert guidance every step of the way, that's exactly what we do at Smart Move Italy Properties. So if you are serious about buying Italy, feel free to reach out for a free call with Diana, who's happy to help answer your questions and get you on track. You can find us, of course, at smartmoveitaly.com/property or with a link in the show notes. All right, that's it for today, my friends. Now, tell me, I have a question. What's the biggest question that you have about buying property in Italy? Send us a message and maybe I'll answer it in an upcoming episode. It's time for listener questions. Just like the old radio call-in shows, my team has picked 3 listener questions, all left on our voicemail. I have no idea what these questions are, but I haven't been stumped yet. Are you ready? Let's get started. All right, my friends, it's time for the audience questions. Number 1, I've seen some amazing properties online, but how do I know if they're actually available for sale before I plan my buying trip? Well, it's about doing that background that I spoke about in this episode, in this podcast. The first thing you need to do is contact your agent, or I guess you could also contact the listing agent if you have the ability to do that, and ask some questions. The main questions to ask about the property, of course. Number 1, is it still available? And ask for further details, like where is it? What is the address? How long has it been for sale for? Any other more details that hopefully you'll be able to use to find the property on Google Maps or Google Earth, because this is a great way to really see where the property is. I can tell you, though, that often an agency will not tell you the address of the property. And it isn't because they're being sneaky and don't want you to know. It's because they don't want other agents to know. In Italy, because there's no MLS and because there's very little exclusivity, often when agents get a listing, they don't want to tell all the other agents out there that they have this owner wants to sell, because the other agents will knock on the door and try to get the listing as well. So usually they hide the address from the buyers until they can verify that you really are a buyer. So sometimes you have to look at the listing, maybe look at the pictures in the listing, see if you can kind of recognize the location, or just even in the description, it can say it's, 1 or 2 kilometers from the main town or the city. So you can try using Google Earth and see if you can find the property. I hope that helps. Number 2, if I find a house I love, how quickly do I need to make an offer? Can I take time to think about it, or will I risk losing it? Well, this is a good question. I think that the best thing to do is don't start seriously looking until you're ready to buy. So the question you need to ask yourself is, if I walked in and I found the property of my dreams tomorrow, am I ready to buy it? Do I have the money available? Can I make an offer? Can I put a deposit down? So if your answer is yes, that means you're ready to buy. So when you find a property that you love, then you can start thinking seriously about how quickly you want to move forward. It is always a good idea, if you find something that you like, to express immediately with your agent that, yeah, this is the one. I love this one. We need more details. And then in Italy, what often happens is your agent will contact the seller's agent and tell them, hey, my client is very interested in making an offer, potentially in this property. We need to discuss and see where we're at, see what more details are about this property. And in most cases, the other agent, the seller's agent, if they get phone calls from other people, will just say, hey, I'm already talking to somebody. We're probably going into an offer, so I'll call you back once I know for sure. And they'll give you a very short time frame, a few days, maybe a week, maybe, to make a decision, and then they'll open up the property again. So it's quite nice that way. Now, in some cases in cities where there's lots of competition and very few properties, you'll have to act a little faster, especially if you have a property that's very well priced in a very popular area. Your agent will be able to guide you. And again, if you have an agent working on your behalf, they're not going to lie to you. They're not going to try to pressure you into urgency. They'll be honest with you and say, hey, look, this is a really good property. There's lots of people seeing it now. If you're ready to move, why don't we start with an offer and see where we go? That's the best course of action. And question number 3, what if I fall in love with a house, but it needs work? How do I figure out the cost of renovations before I buy? Well, this is a great question, because I think this is the dream as well from a lot of people. And that's mostly because of these movies. They find something that's a ruin or a real mess and they need to renovate it. So it's totally possible. And yes, you can get some great deals and add value to it by renovating and have a great property and a great investment in the future. But it's a little bit complicated in Italy. And depending on where you're buying, there could be some really serious renovations or restrictions, to renovations that you need to be aware of. So before you buy a property, you should always have it checked by a geometra or even an architect if you want some major things done, to give you a survey of the property, just so you can understand what can and cannot be done, and also roughly how much it will cost to do the works that you're looking for. And the other nice thing is when you have a local geometra that's doing that inspection, or an architect, they know that hopefully if you do the work, you buy the house and do the work, that you may come back to them to actually do the work and hire them to do the job. So that's a really good way also of finding somebody to do the work and help you later on. But if you've fallen in love and you need some work on the house, then just make sure you have the inspections in advance so you know exactly what you're getting into. Well, that's all for this week's episode. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions about visas, citizenship, property, and really anything about moving to Italy that you would like me to answer in an upcoming episode, please feel free to send us a voicemail at our website at smartmoveitaly.com/podcast, or just click on the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and remember, you can find all of the resources and the links to the people and the places that I mentioned in this episode inside the show notes. Ciao for now. A New Life in Italy podcast is a production of Sentire Media, created and hosted by me, Samantha Wilson. Production by London Nero, and with special thanks to Ali Frothingham, Sophia Pisana, and the entire team at Sentire. Follow A New Life in Italy wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, if you're thinking of moving to Italy, whether full-time, part-time, or for a lifetime, come and see me over at smartmoveitaly.com and we'll help you get here and start living your best life. And don't forget, if you love this episode, please rate and leave a review. It's much appreciated. I can't wait to meet up with you again next week, same time, same place. Ciao for now.